Content over everything. I was raised as a Christian, and but at the moment I would say I have spiritual beliefs. Okay. So I'm not an atheist.
All right, that's all right. We'll get along.
Yeah, because I do believe all these amazing things we have around us. I don't believe they were accidental. I believe something created them. But what it is, you believe it's the truth through Islam. I'm trying to find it out. But the main reason I wanted to ask you a question, maybe I'm mixing you up with Muhammad Hijab. I don't know.
I look very different to him.
You look completely different. But it's politically, he said something about liberalism.
Right.
And I wanted to ask your opinion. Do you believe liberalism is creating a problem politically and socially?
Good. Very good question.
But I don't know if you said that.
I think before I give my talk, we should have a discussion.
Sure.
I'd rather have a discussion. So you said your name is?
Preston.
Preston. So your question is, does liberalism cause a problem?
But I don't want to put you on the spot because I've heard someone accusing liberalism of creating problems within society. I don't know if it was you or if it was Muhammad Hijab.
It's probably Muhammad Hijab, but I agree with that anyway.
Okay, you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. So, are you okay with liberalism?
I believe there are benefits to it, but it's not 100% perfect. Because liberalism allows us to politically respect other religions.
But does it?
On paper it does.
On paper it does.
But there are a lot of us who are liberalists here who would say if Muslims want to pray, let them pray. If Christians want to sing, let them sing. So there are benefits to liberalism.
And would you say liberalism has a good history?
Oh, its history is very checkered. It's not 100% perfect. No. It's not perfect.
All right.
But it's not fascism, and it's not communism. It's not like.
Is it better?
Is it better than fascism?
Yeah.
I would say if I had the choice of living in a liberalist society or a fascist society, I would choose the liberalist society.
Sure. But would you say that simply because it creates less harm or because it's way better?
I would say it's a mixture of both, but then it becomes subjective. What I say is way better, someone might say is wrong. Like if I say through liberalism way better is to respect other religions, there's some people who might hate Islam and Christianity and say that that's wrong.
Right.
So it becomes subjective, but I do think it does allow tolerance.
Okay, so the thing about liberalism, what is the first country in the world that we could say, well, especially amongst European countries, that was a truly liberal country?
Oh, you'd have to go up to Scandinavia probably, see what the Swedes were trying to do.
What about the French?
Or when were the French?
You know, when they got rid of their king and they started believing in liberty and...
I wouldn't say they were liberal then.
Why?
Because then they had what they called the terror for 10 years when Robespierre was controlling...
But what I mean is after they got rid of their king, and France, in terms of secularism and liberalism, was one of the countries that was way more advanced than other countries.
Yeah, I would agree. But they were the reason why I don't see them as liberalists, because on their borders they were consistently fighting wars against countries that were trying to destroy them.
Okay.
So that created a reaction which made their society a very warlike society. That's why I don't see them as liberals.
No, but here's the thing. Why can't a liberal society be a warlike society?
I never saw that as being part of the doctrine of liberalism, depending on what kind of liberalism you're talking about.
What's your name again?
Preston.
Preston, this is where I would give you my perspective. You may agree or disagree. My perspective is that liberalism allows, facilitates, and does not limit a warlike society which indulges itself in colonial behavior, racist behavior, and behavior in which you create mass oppression. For example, France is one of the worst countries when it comes to human rights in what terms of what they did in Africa, right? And France, till today, they're committing a huge injustice when it comes to Africa, like most European countries are, in terms of their trade agreements, in terms of the way they prop up dictators, and they're a liberal nation.
So far we're in agreement, so I'm wondering where are we going to start
Well, let's just carry on agreeing then. We don't have to disagree. So what I see is, I see liberalism as being a force that can allow racist, colonial, and this type of behavior without that challenging the tenets of liberalism. Because when it comes to a liberal society, when you have another society that's not liberal, a liberal society can do preemptive war. And it can say, we are going to fight these people. For example, one of the greatest injustices of the 21st century was the Iraq War. And the Goebbels of the Iraq War, from the liberal end, was Christopher Hitchens. Now, he was a liberal, but he believed that the warfare that they were engaged in was just. And he believed that new atheism that he was part of, they were the only people fighting for secularism alongside the American army in Afghanistan and Iraq. So he considered his cause a cause that you could use military warfare to oppress a people. He felt you could do that.
I've seen what you've done there. You've taken atheism and you put it in liberalism.
Yeah, they're linked.
All right.
Don't you think they're linked?
But I think you can be religious and be liberal.
Potentially. Depends what religion. But for example, I'm a Muslim. I don't believe it's possible to be a Muslim and a liberal. I think it's impossible. It's like being, a vegan who eats a burger now and again. You're not really a vegan, right? You're eating meat now and again. You're not really a vegan.
But don't take this offense. If I say you're a Muslim, but you don't stick 100% to everything in the Quran, then you're being liberal.
To some extent, you could just say that's a sinful Muslim. There's a difference between Preston, right? Yeah. There's a difference between Preston, between a liberal Muslim and a sinful Muslim. So for example, I may be a person who drinks, who womanizes, who does all sorts of madness, but that doesn't mean I'm a liberal. It could just mean I'm just not following the tenets of Islam. A liberal would be someone who says, no, 1400 years ago alcohol was banned, but today we can revise the Quran, right? That would be a liberal Muslim. And a liberal Muslim is basically an oxymoron. Islam is not a religion in which we're proud of being rigid. We're proud of being a religion that doesn't change according to the whims and desires and opinions of the, whatever's fashionable today. We believe we have a way, a path which doesn't need any form of reformation.
I get it now. So you believe then liberalism would be challenging the laws within Islam to push forward some kind of reformation which would destroy Islam.
Absolutely. So I'll give you an example, right? Have you heard the term, Preston, Islam needs to be liberalized?
No, I've heard reformed, but not liberalized.
All right, fine, reformed. But when you say Islam needs to be reformed, it means reformed according to something else.
Yes, that's true.
And what is that something else? It's liberalism, right? So I believe, if anything, we should simply say, well, if you want Islam to be liberalized, prove to us liberalism is true. Prove to us the foundations of liberalism. And show us whose history is worse, Islam or liberalism. Now, when a Muslim or an Islamic country does something that may be racist or colonial or oppressive, we can go back to the foundations of Islam and say, Preston, that is wrong because we have this text to prove you can't do that. However, when it comes to liberalism, their philosophy, their foundation, it allows for that. You can't say, for example, what the French did in Algeria, or what Christopher Hitchens was pushing for in Iraq. You can't say, according to liberal tenets, that these things are wrong. You could simply say, we don't like them, we think they're wrong, but you can't use liberalism to challenge racism or colonialism or anything like that. You simply have to say, well, liberalism allows that.
Liberalism would allow it, because liberalism it's fluid.
Of course.
It's not like, say, the Quran, where the laws come from Allah and they're rigid, as you use that word rigid. You can't go around them.
Yeah.
But you still have to say there are benefits to living in a society that is liberal. We're here right now because of a liberal society.
No, I don't deny that, and I don't deny a communist society has benefits, a socialist society also has benefits, a totalitarian society may also have benefits, but the question is, it's not about the benefit, it's about what's true. So for example, anybody that lives according to a liberal worldview, they will have some things which are very positive, some things that we can learn from. However, the real question is what's true. So if someone says liberalism, Marxism, socialism, communism, what's the best way? My question is going to be, bring me the evidence that your worldview is true. Liberalism today is based upon an atheistic worldview. In the past it wasn't, but today it is. Liberalism is linked to atheism. So what I want to know is, fine, I'll be a liberal, no problem. Give me evidence atheism is true.
Well, you see, it wouldn't work because, like I mentioned, I like what you've done. You've taken liberalism and you've associated it with atheism.
I believe it is.
Yeah. So obviously, as a Muslim, there's no way you're going to touch liberalism if it's with atheism.
Yeah.
So the way you've done it, it makes absolute sense that you would look at it as, and I'm not saying it's perfect. I don't believe there's any perfect system. Some might say Islam is if it's implemented correctly in a Sharia, I don't know. Christians might say their worldview if it's implemented in a Christian world, in a Christian country, I don't know. I've never had the pleasure of living in either one of those kind of scenarios. But what I'm saying is, it's just when I hear you, but it makes sense now because you've associated atheism with liberalism.
Yeah, and the two are linked. The other thing is, look, in Islam, from what you know, is alcohol banned or is it allowed?
Alcohol, from what I know, they say it's haram, which is forbidden.
Forbidden. Yet God says in the Quran, alcohol has benefits. But the benefits are outweighed by the harm.
Okay.
So liberalism, it can have some good stuff. Communism, socialism can have some good stuff. But the real question is, me and you can disagree about hypothetical societies. What we really need to ask is, which worldview is true? That's the question.
So apart from you mentioning to me that liberalism and atheism are intertwined,
Yeah.
what is the other thing that within liberalism? Because you mentioned violence, but
Yeah.
I don't want us to go down the road of violence because I could look at caliphates and I could then start saying, oh, well, they waged war. And I could say Fatimid Caliphate, Abbasid Caliphate, and I could mention war. So I don't think we should stick with the war thing because no one is really morally good because each party has been involved in war.
I agree with you partially, but I disagree with you partially. All human organized activities lead to violence. This is, whether you're a secularist, an atheist, a nationalist, all organized human activities lead to violence. All societies, all states have warfare. That's part and parcel of human. So the question really is, whose ethics of war, whose worldview is correct?
Subjective.
And it's not subjective if we know what's true. And the thing which I also wanted to say is this. If we look at a liberal society, some things become prevalent in a liberal society which destroy the foundations of society.
Could you give examples?
Okay, I'll give one example that I was recently speaking to someone about. It's fornication. Okay? Now, fornication is something which is absolutely normal in the West, but just a few decades ago, it was frowned upon. Now, I'll give you a few examples and let me know what you think about this, right? So, you have a society in which you don't really have a nuclear family. You have a mother, a father, a child. You don't really have that anymore. What you have is open relationships or fatherless families or single moms or single dads or whatever. And then when you have a child that's raised without parents, without the nuclear family, you get all sorts of societal problems. Additional to that, one of the things the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said is when a society, basically I'm paraphrasing, when you get fornication, God sends down diseases that their forefathers have never heard of. Now, if you look at society today, in London, I was just talking the other day to a doctor about the statistics in London about herpes, about HIV, STDs, and he works, obviously, he's seen the worst of the worst in London, right? And what you find is that not only do you have broken homes, not only do you have STDs, you have situations where basically there's no more trust anymore. So for example, someone's married to someone else, they come home late, where have you been? You know, people are always worried my partner's cheating on me. You could simply go onto your phone, download an app, right? Grindr, Tinder, whatever they're called, swipe, and that's what's going on right now. There is mass fornication happening, and this is leading to societal degeneration, STDs, broken homes, and ultimately, nihilism. Nihilism is the idea life is meaningless.
Oh, that's a big stretch.
Okay.
See how you've taken liberalism to atheism and then to nihilism.
Woo. It's a jump, but I believe I can justify it.
There's no evidence.
Okay, so firstly, do you agree with me that nihilism is a problem?
Oh yes, yeah.
All right, so we agree.
In fact, I've been I've accused certain people of being nihilists that I've spoken to here because of their worldview. So yeah.
Good. Okay. Now, what does nihilism mean according to you? What do you think it means?
I've forgotten the definition, but basically their morals are very questionable because they answer to no one. It's very fluid. They can make up whatever they want.
There you go.
There was something else in the definition.
That's a precise definition. They can make up whatever they want. Right? So if I decide to spend my life looking for cures to diseases, and someone else decides to spend their life drawing a circle and drawing another circle on top of the circle and drawing another circle on top of the circle forever, that person and what I do in my life is equivalent. I'm no better than them and they're no better than me because life is meaningless. That's nihilism. Firstly, atheism leads to nihilism because life has no meaning, no purpose, no value, and everything is relative and subjective.
I mean, I'm not going to argue on behalf of the atheists because I'm not an atheist, but I know some would disagree with how you said atheism leads to nihilism. But my main discussion with you was to find out why you were very suspicious about liberalism. And but I can understand now from what you said, connecting with atheism and nihilism, and you talked historically about countries that perpetuate liberalism, how they've been violent. But then I did mention Sweden. That is a good example, or is it a bad example?
Okay, so if we look at the history of Sweden, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, but there can be instances where you can find almost all liberal states are involved in something. Maybe Sweden is or it isn't. The point I was making is, if a state like France does commit those violent acts, you can't use liberalism to discount them. Liberalism does not have a mechanism to get rid of that. The other thing is, I believe liberalism and atheism today are as well connected as wearing a mask and more healthier lifestyle or whatever. Basically, there's a direct correlation. There's a direct correlation between liberalism and atheism, because liberalism, what does it basically say? You yourself are the free agent. You do what you want, right? And if you look at even slogans today, Nike, just do it. Slogans like follow your heart. You've heard that slogan before.
I've heard Nike, just do it, yeah.
But the Islamic paradigm, the paradigm that we believe is from God, it says, do not follow your heart blindly. Do not follow your desires blindly. Do not follow your forefathers blindly. Use your mind, think, reflect. In fact, to wage war against your own lower desires. Not making, and God in the Quran says, have you seen the one who has made his desire God? He's made his desire God. I do what I want. Reality is what I make it, right? And if you look at secularism and liberalism and atheism, what does it say? You make your own reality. Do what you want.
Secularism, liberalism, atheism, nihilism. You put them all in the same category.
Yeah. No, I believe one leads to another.
Okay, they all...
So for example, you can be a secularist, but a secularist can be a fascist. A secularist can be someone else, okay? However, a subset of secularism is liberalism.
It will lead to liberalism.
And what is the foundation of liberalism? It is the idea that it's not revelation, it's what you come up with.
So what will you do against liberalism then? Can you do anything against its popularity?
What I will do against liberalism is simply explain to the people who believe in liberalism, give me evidence it's true.
It's true. When you say it's true, true as in the true way to live?
No. What I mean is, forget your practical ideas of X, Y, Z. The question is, why is that worldview, with its particular imperatives, where did it come from? How do we know it's true? For example, I'll tell you something, Preston. Someone asks me, why do you believe in the Quran? I will say, I believe in the Quran because the Quran's message about God is so natural and intuitive, it makes sense. There's one God, nothing like the creation, the only one worthy of worship. Okay, why do I believe in the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him? He did these miracles, or he said these things, or his teachings are timeless, or X, Y, Z, okay? Now when it comes to liberalism, They simply assume it's true. They don't actually go out of their way to argue for it. Now, you spoke about Muhammad Hijab earlier. Muhammad Hijab had a debate with Dr. Lars Gu from Norway or Sweden or wherever he's from. And they had a debate about liberalism, and he admitted liberalism has no proof. It has no evidence. It's something which isn't proven.
But I don't dispute that, but I don't think putting liberalism and Islam in the same category works, because Islam, as you mentioned the Prophet Muhammad, you mentioned God, Allah. Liberalism does not come from a deity. It does not have a prophet.
Their deity is themselves. They've made themselves the deity. Why? What is a deity? A deity is the ultimate value. It's the ultimate thing that you look up to. It's the ultimate goal. So in Islam, we believe all of our love, hope, fear, trust, it's all for the Creator. Now, when you make your love, hope, trust, hope, fear all for something else, that becomes your God.
I watch it.
A God isn't necessarily, okay, I've made up a little physical idol, this is my God, right? Your God is whatever you consider to be the greatest. And in Islam, we as Muslims, we say Allahu Akbar. Now when you hear in Speaker's Corner, if I go here and I go Allahu Akbar, what happens? People get scared, yeah? All it means is God is the greatest. That's all it means. God is the greatest. Now since God is the greatest, what does that mean? It means all authority, all power, all majesty is for God. And we should live our lives in a way that pleases God. That's all it means. And that is the very kryptonite of liberalism. Because liberalism, the highest value is not God. The highest value is the self. So I believe, regardless of the benefits of liberalism, it's not true, and therefore I would never be a liberal.
Because it also leads to atheism, and then eventually
it comes from atheism and leads to atheism. Although, funnily enough, the liberals in the past, they weren't atheists. They
were religious.
Yes. Well, not religious. They believed in God. So, for example, they were deists. They were people who believed, some of them were Christian. From what I know, even the American forefathers, they were deists, right? And, you know, they said about the American Constitution, we hold these rights to be self-evident, immutable, given to us by the Creator. And this is in the Declaration of Independence. This is in the human rights, right? This is their human rights conception, that it comes from God. It's immutable. But when things like you said, moral nihilism, when you said morals are subjective, what does it basically mean? It means these things are relative, subjective, and they have no basis. So I'll ask you a question. Currently, we have this massive thing happening around the world about Black Lives Matter. Okay. Now, I've asked a question, and I challenge Darwinists, as you know, I challenge these atheists. I've said, do black lives really matter to you guys? Is it actually the case that a black life is equal to a white life? And they're obviously going to try and say, yeah, it is. But is that true, according to Darwin? Darwin considered that in the future, you guys are going to get wiped out by the civilized races, which is his race, and we, the Asians or whatever we are, we're also savages, we're beneath the white people. He believed the highest of the whites were the English, and French and Portuguese were lower. Why were the English number one in hierarchy?
They were dominating the world at the time.
They were dominating the world, right? So what it is, even today, you know the people who discovered the double helix structure of the DNA, they won the Nobel Prize for that.
I've heard of it, but I don't know the history.
Watson and Crick. Watson and Crick, they're two scientists.
Okay.
Watson recently, he said, our policies in Africa, remember he's a Darwinist atheist, liberal. Our policies in Africa, meaning the Western world, they're bound to fail because we are assuming black people are equal to white people, and anybody that's had black employees knows that's not true. And this is Darwinism. So Darwinists, what do they believe? Do they really believe black people are equal to white people? No, they don't. And this is the thing. Liberalism cannot step in and tell you, no, all human beings are equal because they're created by God, and what matters is your own piety. Liberalism doesn't say that. Liberalism, all it's based upon is the idea that we don't need revelation. Now, if we go to Darwinian science, what does Darwinian science say? It says the pinnacle, the highest, is the white. and then you have different types of white Slavs or whatever. You go down, you get Asians, you get Indians, you get darker, then you get black people, and next to the black people you get what? You get chimpanzees. That's their hierarchy. So liberalism cannot deny that hierarchy, cannot deny that taxonomy. As a Muslim or a Christian or someone else, we can say all human beings are equal, and we don't believe in your Darwinian nonsense, right? We don't believe in your delusions. But a liberal atheist will have to say, how else do we classify humans, right? Now, liberalism is also linked to capitalism, as you know, right? Liberal societies and capitalistic societies, they dovetail.
But capitalism exists in every other society. It's not just a liberal thing.
Yes and no. For example, capitalism doesn't exist in Cuba. Capitalism doesn't exist in China. Capitalism doesn't exist in all these countries.
Yeah, but the reason capitalism, they do buy and sell things in Cuba.
No, that's not capitalism.
That's part of capitalism.
No. That's too simplistic. That's too vague of a definition.
But then I could say to you, the reason why they don't profit from capitalism is because of the US trade embargo.
No. It's because, look, the countries which are not capitalistic, they decided not to be capitalistic.
But which country is not capitalistic? This is news to
Well,
me.
Cuba, Venezuela, China, Russia. There are countries which are...
How is China not capitalistic? They've got Nike factories and iPhone factories.
That doesn't mean they're capitalistic. They have the people in charge of China are the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. They're communists.
Yeah, I know what they claim to be, but I'm saying economically.
Yeah, I think it's based upon your definition of capitalism. If your definition is buying and selling, then everyone's a capitalist.
Yes, from an economic point of view.
That's
exactly.
not the definition I'm using.
Okay.
I'm using the definition of the standard way of capitalism, which is that you don't have interference from the state in the market. You have free reign, and you let the market sort out itself, right? So even if you look at America, we had the 2008 crash, and then the American government came in and bailed out these big companies. That's not capitalism, that's socialism.
Yeah, that is socialism.
That's socialism,
yeah,
right?
Socialism.
So why did I bring up capitalism? Okay, from a capitalistic point of view, there's nothing wrong with the exploitation of Africa. Nothing wrong at all from a capitalistic point of view. I'll give you an example. I went to Malawi in 2013. Malawi at the time, and still today, is one of the poorest countries in the world. The president at the time, her name is Joyce Banta. The previous president, he was an economist, and he didn't want to devalue the currency, and he went up against the Europeans. He went up against the Germans, he went up against the English. And what they did to Malawi is they put a trade embargo on Malawi, which crashed this economy, which caused so many problems. And then the new president came, the Europeans supported her, and she devalued the currency. Now, did you hear about this?
No, not in the mainstream
Most
news,
people here that never have heard of this. I never heard about this. Why? Because it's not news worthy for major independent liberal outlets. Why? It's a poor African nation which is being pummeled by European countries. It doesn't fit their narrative. But when they give aid, now let me ask you a question. Do you believe Europe gives aid to Africa?
No, it says it does on paper, but it doesn't. The aid doesn't go to African countries. It goes to the corrupt political leaders.
Fine. But on a perception point of view, what would they say?
They believe that, yes, that European countries do give lots of foreign aid to African countries. They would say yes.
And the reality is, the reverse is true. Africa gives aid to Europe. Most people don't know that. I'll prove this to you. If we look at European resources, what do we have? Do we have copper, oil, uranium,
Cobalt.
gold, right? All these things. Fruits, do we have these things? Just down there we have supermarkets. Where's the fruit from? Okay, now, if right now Africa stops giving aid to Europe, says, you're not taking our bananas, our fruits, our oil, our gas, you're not taking any of this. Fine. Europe, your chicken is worth our chicken. Your beef is worth our beef. Okay? One for one like. No currencies involved. What will Europe trade on? What does the UK have? Apples, potatoes. What do they have? Africa has the resources, and that aid is coming to the UK. That aid is coming to Europe. So the thing is...
No, it's interesting. You would classify that as aid.
It is aid. What else is it?
I won't disagree with you in regards to all those things. I already know that, and I agree with you there. But I like the way you've used it as, you put it under the banner of aid.
I didn't. This is what black academics who are working on this, they're trying to, and this is the thing which I was speaking to one of my friends, Dawood, about. He comes to Speaker's Corner sometimes.
I've seen him.
Yeah, he's a black intellectual. And I said to him, Dawood, where is the black intellectuals of today? Where have they gone? Where's the Malcolm X's of today?
They're still around.
No, they're still around. But are they? Are they pushed to the front? No. What do we have? The people pushed to the front are the people who don't represent the black movement. They don't represent the best, the cream of the crop. What do they actually do? They keep these people at the back. Yeah, they try and create a situation. Like, for example, he was telling me, and he's doing some amazing work about, what was considered black in the 60s and 70s. Even Asians, they were considered by the British black. Anybody that was not white was basically black, right? So what do we have now? We basically have a movement in the world, like all across the world, this injustice. And why did I start off this topic of race? It's to do with liberalism again.
And you associate it with Darwinism.
With Darwinism. A liberal, when they're looking for their understanding of the world, they can only go to nature. And their nature, that version is not based upon the understanding of nature involving a God. It's the understanding of nature with no God. And when they look at the world through that Darwinian lens, the naturalistic lens, they would say black people are lower. And there's nobody in the world that can say these tenets of liberalism means that black people are equal to white people. What happened to George Floyd was wrong. Nobody can say that. Liberalism has no mechanism to provide that. All liberals can do is they can give surface level arguments, speak about human rights as if they exist, but human rights from a liberal point of view, they do not exist. They are figment of the imagination. Why? Because if there is no God, then there is no grounding for human rights.
So then how are the laws made in the liberal societies that govern human rights then?
Very good question. They are a remnant of the liberal world order which existed prior to atheism, when liberalism took its grounding for rights in God. So for example, you look at America. America's still a very religious society. However, say in the next 100 years America becomes atheistic, they will still have liberal laws. They'll still have human rights. And that's based upon their Christian heritage. Okay? For example, this idea of universal human rights. This is not universal, and it's not something which a state like China accepts. In 2013, there was a document known as document number 9 that was discovered, that was circulating around the CCP circles in China. And that document was about how we need to fight, as the Chinese, we need to fight Western influence. And we need to fight their ideals. And one of the ideals is the Western conception of human rights. Because they don't have that conception. Look what they're doing to their own population.
What, they are Uyghurs in Xinjiang?
The Uyghurs in Xinjiang, exactly. The people, the Falun Gong practitioners, Tibet, Inner Mongolia, Hong Kong, look what they're doing. So this idea that you can have the existence of human rights without God, this is simply not true. You need a grounding. Because not only do you need a foundation for human rights, you also need the idea of pain and pleasure. If you don't give people their rights, there is a hereafter that you're going to be accountable.
Well, let me ask you something. In regards to these things that we're talking about, say in the criminal world, capital punishment being banned, would you regard that as being a part of the liberalist political ideology?
Not necessarily, because liberalism can allow for capital punishment.
But the thing is, capital punishment is prevalent to religion. In religion,
not really. You can, for example, and Muhammad Hijab's worked on this. He's worked on treason laws in liberal societies. Okay. So it's not the case that a liberal society cannot have capital punishment, because liberal societies did have capital punishment. In fact, liberal societies were even committing genocide.
I know, but that's the point I'm making. These liberal societies, they had capital punishment, but over a period of time, they removed capital punishment. And I'm asking you, do you believe that that was a part of liberalism?
Very good question.
That led to them getting rid of capital punishment?
Are you off? Okay, assalamu alaikum, see you later.
Was that part of liberalism? Or was it?
Very good question, Preston. It's not part of liberalism, I believe. It's part of this changing moral zeitgeist that we have in the world today, which is because there is no source of morality.
Sorry, I don't want to stop you because you're making sense, but the changing moral zeitgeist, so that's separate from liberalism.
Yeah, that's the changing whims and desires of society.
So what is that then? Because
That's in flux. That's in flux. That's just fashionable. Whatever's fashionable.
Okay, so that's not liberalism.
That's not liberalism.
Okay. Oh well, that's one good thing. At least you're not condemning liberalism for doing.
No, because you can have, like I said, the liberals in the past, they believed in laws which they believed from God, and they did not trust atheists. And today, atheism has hijacked liberalism, right? Now, when it comes to what was I saying about? What was I talking about a second ago? The last thing I said before I forgot.
Because before then I was asking you about capital punishment and how within liberalism...
Yeah, the moral zeitgeist, right? So the shifting moral zeitgeist. You see, we have a lot of changing moral ideas in society. So things that were considered really, really bad in the past are considered fine now. Things, and 500 years from now, you'll have totally different morals. But what it is if there is no God, then you cannot say one set of morals is better than another. God is the source of all morality. Yeah? Now, from a Darwinian point of view, and Darwinism and capitalism, they have a history. Yeah. Thomas Malthus, have you heard of him? He was an economist. So he was a capitalist, and he believed in the fact that you have an basically you have an asymmetrical situation where you have a lot of demand and you don't have enough supply. Yeah? And that you have these pressures. And these pressures is what, countries run on and whatever, right? So Thomas Malthus, he was being read by the likes of Darwin. Darwin was inspired by Thomas Malthus, this capitalist, to come up with his idea of natural selection, which again is about pressure, which again is about competition. And capitalism is about competition. Now capitalism essentially is what? Okay, we will get the best out of society if we have an all-out competition. We don't have any state interference. We don't have states coming along and saying, your company is too big, we have to break it up. That's what communism does. So, might is right. Capitalism allows that. Darwinism was directly inspired. Darwin was directly inspired. His theory of natural selection was directly inspired by capitalistic ideals. And when it took off, there was a movement that Darwin did not head, but he led to that movement. That movement was known as social Darwinism. Social Darwinism. Social Darwinism was the idea that the difference between the genders, the difference between the races, the difference between poor and weak nations, the difference between the rich and the oppressed, this is all part and parcel of nature, and we shouldn't interfere in this because it impedes the progress of mankind. And this is something, again, that unless you have a belief in something beyond nature, you cannot challenge. So these things are linked. I know you're probably still, not totally convinced about how some of these things are linked.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I'm not here to fly the flag for liberalism. I was always fascinated by what you or Mohammed Hijab was saying against liberalism. So I thought.
Do you see where we're coming from?
I find it fascinating from what you've said, correlating liberalism with atheism and nihilism. And as a Muslim, I can then see why you naturally would be against liberalism, especially when you then look within liberalism and you talked about Darwinism, which is not based on
revelation.
But he was actually religious, Charles Darwin.
Charles Darwin believed in God, but he did not believe God interfered with the world. So he believed everything was naturalistic. When he published The Origin of Species, he believed in God, but he was a deist. He didn't believe in revelation. When the last 10 years of his life came, he became an agnostic because of the problem of evil and suffering. Now, what's very important is the way that people defend him and defend his racism is they say, well, he was racist because everyone around him was racist, so, But the thing is, look, he wasn't racist because people around him were racist. His views were actually better than the people around him. For example, he was against slavery, but other people around him were pro-slavery. his views on race were dictated by his theory. It wasn't just the case that society was racist, so he was racist. Yeah? And I truly believe, if you look at atheists today, they jump on the bandwagon of Black Lives Matter or things like this, and Darwinists, they speak as if there's no history, that they don't have a bad history. They need to recognize, if race is a hot topic and it's an issue which needs to be dealt with, then the root of the issue is also their worldview, their Darwinian worldview. Have you heard of Yuval Noah Harari?
Yuval Noah Harari, no.
He's a evolutionary historian. He's written a famous book called Sapiens. It's a very famous book. In that book, and you can find it in any bookstore, it's very, very popular. Bill Gates, Barack Obama, a lot of people have spoken about it. In that book, he says, social Darwinism, the racist element of Darwinism, it was being published by the most prestigious universities in the Western world. What put a nail in his grave was not science or academia, was what Hitler did with it. It was the sociological impact of Hitler and what he did, which led people to walk away from social Darwinism. It wasn't the fact that they found something new scientifically. Hence why it's an elephant in the room even today.
So then you would probably think Muslims who have no problem with evolution and believe it's all being done by Allah, that's an oxymoron?
Okay, that's a very good question. It depends. It depends.
The reason I ask is because I've come across, not many, most Muslims, they don't co-sign or support evolution or anything, but I have come across the odd Muslim who will say yes, but it's Allah that's
so this is a wide topic. I'll give you a few.
I mean, I don't want to digress.
No, but it's a good question. It's a very good question. What I would say is this: if a Muslim does believe that evolution is God-directed, they're not really a Darwinist, because a Darwinist would say natural selection is the blind driving force, not God. So they're not technically a Darwinist; they're an evolutionist. An evolutionist cannot be a Darwinist, so it doesn't have to be a Darwinist. And then it depends what type of evolutionist they are. They could be a neo-Lamarckian, natural genetic engineering or whatever. They could be different models. At the same time, as a Muslim, there are some parts of the Darwinian story of the tree of life, say, that we can't accept, right? That are very, very problematic theologically. So even if a Muslim says, yeah, we can accept this, we can accept that, we still believe, for example, that the Adamic creation was miraculous. How exactly it was miraculous, people can debate. But I'll give you an example. If you go up to any person in the world who studies biology and you tell them, can a virgin give birth? What would they say?
No, in the medical world, no, it's not possible.
Impossible.
It's not possible.
They'll laugh at it. But as a Muslim, I believe a virgin did give birth, which is Mary. Why do I believe that? Because God created the system where a man and a woman come together to have a child, and God can create a child with or without that system because He created the system. So in the Quran, God says, when He wills a thing, He says, be, and it is. So the creation of Jesus, if me and you, we were observers, and we went around London and we got the best scientists, and we got into a time machine, and we went back to Bethlehem 2,000 years ago. And all of the village of Bethlehem was frozen. And we the scientists took out the DNA of all the people.
Okay.
They would take out the DNA of baby Jesus, and they would say, looking at all the genomes, they would say the closest match to being the mother is who? They would say it's Mary, genetically. Who's the closest in terms of being a father? Genetically. They would say it's somebody in Mary's family, or it's this other guy. They will not accept it's a virgin birth, because they only believe in cause and effect. They don't believe in the supernatural world.
Because that goes into the realm of
metaphysics, right? But we as Muslims, regardless of the whole world coming together and saying a virgin birth is not possible, we will say it is possible because God created the scientific, the laws of nature, and God can change them, right? So that's why the creation, and interestingly, God says the similitude of Adam is like Jesus. They both had some form of a miraculous origin. Now, that's why we as Muslims, we have our worldview, and we will never budge on that worldview regardless of how people think or perceive of us, because we believe our worldview to be true and we have evidence for it. And this is why, coming back to your original question about liberalism, I would never accept liberalism because I will say Islam is a complete package, a complete system, and I cannot accept being a partial Muslim. I believe Islam to be true, so I'll be a complete Muslim.
Okay, well, that was it. I was just keen to know, why are you always against liberalism? But now you've explained it. It makes sense. I can't disagree with your worldview if you're a Muslim and you're following Islam, or you're a Christian, because I see certain Christians doing it here as well, speaking out against liberalism. Yeah, it makes sense.
Have you ever read the Quran?
I tried reading it. It's not easy. Yeah. I've actually spent more time reading hadiths than the Quran. The Quran's not easy to read.
I'll give you a challenge, right? Thing is, me and you, on my YouTube channel, I have a live stream that I do. We both jump on the live stream, maybe once a month, twice a month, and we both just read the Quran, and we can discuss it.
Yeah, I don't mind. I do that here sometimes with some Muslims. Your channel is...
Darwinian Delusions.
Darwinian Delusions.
I'm changing it, yeah.
Darwinian Delusions.
Give me your number.
I can give you my YouTube. No, I know your YouTube channel now.
Yeah, are you on WhatsApp?
No.
It's alright, I'll give you a call.
When's your next show?
I do it regularly. I can do it anytime. Just give me your number, and then I'll liaise with you and we'll set it up.
I'll come on your show. I'll let you know. My.
Do you want to give your email instead?
Email. Yeah. Actually, yeah, because that's the name that I use online.
There you go. Just.
After my friend has a question. Oh yeah, true actually.
No problem. You could just come here behind Preston and we could speak. What's your name?
Arthur.
Arthur, how are you doing, Arthur?
Good, thank you.
Preston.
Yeah, that's me online. Witness.
I like it. Is that your YouTube channel?
Yeah, Witness.
Why don't we do a collaboration? You get more, subscribers. It'd be good. It'd be nice.
I don't have many subscribers.
No, but you'll get more that way. We could do a sort of swap.
Yeah, but that's me. Anyway, Witness. I'll come on your channel, Darwinian Delusions, and so at least you'll know now I'm Witness. So I won't use the name Preston. Well, I'll explain I'm Preston, but it's Witness. That's the
no
code.
problem at all.
So thanks very much for your time.
It was great speaking to you. I wish I had a copy of the Quran.
No more Qurans.
You've had them?
I've had many from.
So we just need to read it, isn't it?
From EF Dawa, SC Dawa.
Nice. You know all the guys.
Yeah, so I've spoken to them, so I've got their Qurans and I've been reading. It's like I said, the Quran's not too easy to read. I've got like the Sahih International version, and I don't know which version's supposed to be easier, but
the thing is, Sahih International's good. What I would do is we could just liaise via the live stream, read a certain translation, and just discuss it.
I like to do that because I do that with some Christians. I read the Bible and I ask them questions to try and make sense, heads or tails. So it would be brilliant to do that with you and read the Quran and try and make heads or tails of it.
Absolutely.
I also listen to a lot of people who preach Ifa, which is a Yoruba traditional system, but I know you're not really interested in
Yoruba,
Yoruba,
Central Nigeria.
Yeah, the southwest Yoruba land. Ifa. And
I've never heard of that.
Fudon and IFA.
I went Nigeria just a few months ago.
All right, where were you?
I went Lagos, Abuja. We had some, because Nigeria has a rich Muslim history.
Yeah.
So we were in the Hausa region.
So you were up north?
Up north, yeah. Then we went to Yoruba, and it was amazing because I was watching Nollywood, and it was something special.
I'd say Nollywood is like Hollywood. It's not necessarily representative of all Nigerians.
It's not, but what I found interesting was a lot of witchcraft, and a lot of and the witchcraft is done by Muslims for some reason, right? And they call it juju. And also, what was the other thing? A lot of Christian evangelism on Nollywood. But one thing also I noticed is some of the buildings said, "Beware of 419. This building's not for sale."
419 it's
corruption.
Someone told me a long time ago, I think it was one of my brothers, he said it was 419 was actually a government code
for fraud
in regards to dealing with fraud, but it's become the slang to say fraud 419. So so all the things you mentioned that you picked up from Nollywood, they are common in Nigeria. There's a great deal of Christian evangelism. There's a great deal of Muslim dawah, especially in the north, and there are dubious people committing fraud. But
Yeah.
there's a lot more to Nigeria than those three things.
There is. And what's interesting, when I went there, I was really surprised at the development. So, for example, when I went to Malawi, Malawi was very poor. When I went to Nigeria and I stayed in the hotels, and I was like, this is like quite rich. Yeah, so there's a lot of,
Yeah, hopefully they'll.
There is inequality though.
Yeah.
There's a lot of inequality.
Yeah,
I think most of the wealth is in the north.
Which they get from the southeast, the oil and
The oil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully the brain drain from Nigeria will reverse, and Nigerians, like many of us, will start coming back home and making it a better country, and we'll
Absolutely.
leave Britain and England to the English to do what they want. But thanks very much for
It was great speaking to you.
Take care.
What did you say your name was? Arthur?
Yeah, Arthur. So,
My name is Saboor, by the way.
cool, nice to meet you. So, how many...
Maybe if you come a bit
Alright.
closer, because of the...
I'll take my helmet off.
Nice bike, by the way. It looks very expensive.
Thank you.
I used to have a Ridgeback.
Yeah, so basically...
Maybe you need to be closer because of the...
Oh, right. So, I'm a music producer, and because my friend is Muslim, and he's always said to me, like, to a certain extent, some music is haram, but I've never fully understood to what extent that is, I've always tried to like understand what that means. Like, is there rap music, electric music? Like, is there any way you could explain that?
I prefer not to answer that question because it's not my area of expertise.
Okay, fair enough.
Although in Islam, I think Muhammad Hijab would be probably better in terms of the evidences for what is classified as music, when can you use your voice, when can you do other things. But the main thing is, are you looking into Islam, and is that a barrier of some sort?
Well, he's always educating me on stuff, which is really, like, I'm always interested because like there's a lot of stuff I'm learning from it. But I've never really gone out my way to research it and look into it and stuff, which I should do, like, because I know it'll open up like a whole new world of morality and philosophy and stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the other thing is, like, how old are you at the moment?
18.
18. So before you know it, you'll be 60. Before you know it. And if you speak to anybody that's old, they'll say, oh, it's only yesterday I was 15. It's only yesterday I was 20. Like, oh, I used to come to this park. Like, I met this guy, I think he's passed away now. He once said to me, I used to come to this park with my father. And that guy was like in his 70s. And he said, I used to come here when I was a little boy.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks of what happened 30, 50 years ago like it was yesterday. First thing, Arthur, is about the shortness of life. Life's short.
Yeah.
Before you know it, you're going to get old. 2, there's no guarantee you'll be alive this time next year. You know, young people die from corona. Actually, you just get stabbed up nowadays. Young people just get stabbed, right? That's just what happens.
Yeah.
But additional to that, we all have questions. Why do we exist? What's the best way to live? What happens after we die? And this age is the best age to think about it. Because, you know, after this age, you go uni, then you start working, then you get lost, and you're lost in the work, family, all that. Then before you know it, you're middle-aged, 50 or whatever. This is the age where I find a lot of people question. And this is the age where you can start thinking about the bigger questions. My advice to you is give him a copy of the Quran, start reading it and thinking about it. But don't think, okay, if I become Muslim, this is haram. If I become Muslim, this is halal. First, just look into if Islam is true. If it's true, accept it. While you accept it, you may have a girlfriend, you may drink, you may have a different lifestyle.
It's quite halal. He doesn't do anything.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, but it's better to be Muslim than not be Muslim. It's better to be Muslim who's not fully following Islam than not be Muslim.
Yeah.
And over time, you become better. But God didn't make us angels. He made us humans. You know, we have flaws. And, you know, you take everything one step at a time. But don't neglect these life questions because you never know.
Yeah.
You know, do you live in London?
Yeah.
Yeah, your chances of dying are quite high. In my area, just the last couple of months before the lockdown stopped it, right? I went to the mosque to pray the afternoon prayer. Came back home, went back for the night prayer, and in between someone got stabbed across the road and died. And this happening all across London. Your area, Ladbroke Grove, right?
Hackney.
Huh? Hackney, there you go, Murder Central. right? So we've got to think about these questions and these types of things.
Yeah, fair enough. Is there any like kind of sources you could recommend for me to look into, just for that? Because I've always for like 2 years now, I've always wondered to what extent is music haram.
So Muhammad Hijab's not here, but if you want, I can give you a number of somebody that can help you with that.
Depends
do you want to give
on,
me a number or
who
email?
You go to, who you look at as well. There's a lot of contention with what's haram.
Do you want to give you a number or email?
Email. Yeah.
I think if you look into
I'll put you in touch with someone.
Cool.
Are you still doing
Nice
your
weather.
PhD, brother?
I have to probably delay it because of the some issues
Exams
this year.
are problematic.
No, it's not. It's I was going to start the PhD this year, September, but coronavirus happened. A few other things happened. Probably next year. Inshallah. That's the plan. So it was really nice speaking to you, though.
Yeah, you too.
And
It's nice to meet you.
just be in touch. I got your email now.
Yeah, cool.
And you're going to get a blank email. What's your name? Raza and Arthur.
Arthur, yeah.
Be in contact. It'll be
Cool,
great.
nice one. Thank you. It's nice to meet you.
Mohammed, because I've been here since 2. You guys normally come around this time.
Just randomly.
Randomly.
Early, late, depends. Come at different times.
Coming next week as well. Coming next week.
Hopefully. Where do we pray?
I usually pray on the grass. Pray outside of your brother pray.
Yeah, but we can't pray here, can we?
Just go behind some tree now. That's what I did.
Why don't we just go over there and pray outside?
On the concrete.
Yeah, on the concrete over there, on the grass over there.
You can pray on the grass, but not on the
Yeah, let's do the grass. Where's the COV guy? See, that's a copper right there.
DJ! That's the cup.
Are you guys playing outside? Oh, going back. Okay, I'm running on my way.
Content over everything. From your Come, man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
Create something. And
Listen.
stuff, he doesn't represent the values of today, but he represents, say, a link to the past. That you understand that your culture is richer and deeper because it has a past and because it has a movement over time. It doesn't
No BBC. No ITV. Not even listen to the MUF. Sorry, I'm lying. Listen to your mum,
So when you pass that structure every day, it's an offence.
It's not.
No, for you it isn't. You'll never
For no one, it's an
understand.
offence.
How can you say that you're not black?